Hello, hello. Welcome back to the podcast slash YouTube channel. If you're new, hi, my name is Renisha Rennie. Just shop online, go by a lot of different names. Welcome. It's nice to have you here. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I really want to talk about hope. This is a theme that has been coming up for me a lot lately with everything that's going on collectively, but also in my personal life. And it's just something that I often think about, especially as a Sagittarius woman. I recently posted on Threads, which if you're just finding me, I encourage you to follow me there because I have been more active and more vocal, and I'm working to try to build community and spaces. So check that out. We recently posted that I see a lot of takes about Sagittarian people, and I'm a Sagittarius sun, about our optimism. And I am someone who has flipped back and forth between being really nihilistic and having like very, very pessimistic phases of life, especially when I've been going through particularly depressive episodes. As someone who lives with BPD and CPTSD and has been healing and navigating complex trauma and all of that. But I'm also on the flip side, someone who has also been a very idealistic person and has in a lot of different relationships in my life and seasons of my life been called a dreamer or someone who is a little naive or unrealistic. And it's always bothered me whenever I've gotten that type of feedback from people. And I recently saw a post about, just Sagittarians and our optimism, and I felt called to share that. A lot of people talk a lot about our optimism without realizing that it comes from a place of being so brutally honest with ourselves. And I think that when you take time to be incredibly honest with yourself, it allows space for you to dream bigger because you're able to see the truth of all of the ways that you limit yourself or all of the beliefs that you carry that might be limiting. And when you're able to be honest about those things, about the ways we hold ourselves back or keep ourselves stuck, then it actually creates space and makes it easier for us to dream up worlds and realities and experiences that we want to experience and live. Um, and I hope that makes sense. But right now, this is something that's been coming up with everything that's been going on because this has been an incredibly difficult year. Um, I mean, I think that's like the understatement of the century. I think, especially those of you who are unfortunately in places where there's just so much social unrest and turmoil and injustice and corruption and pain and tragedy all around us in our communities. It's just incredibly hard, not to mention just a lot of us are suffering personally with our mental health, with our finances. I know for me, like this is a season where I'm not employed currently. I, navigating my own mental health and co-parenting and a divorce. And honestly, I don't have no idea how, like, what's gonna happen, like how I'm gonna take care of what I need to take care of. I'm not quite sure, honestly, at this stage of life. I have to completely rely on faith and surrender. And that is really difficult for me because I've historically been someone who is a control freak. And I talk about that in some of my previous episodes. But I really want to talk about hope now because I feel like so many of us are in this position, whether it's due to our own personal circumstances, whether you're like me and maybe you've been struggling with relationship breakdowns, financial insecurity, housing insecurity, even. There's a lot going on with, social, political issues as well. So just the weight of the news cycle, the weight of what's happening within our communities and families who've been directly impacted in so many different ways by what's happening with everything that's going on in our country. If you are in the United States in particular, then I think that hope is something that can feel a little bit almost triggering to hear when you are in the thick of everything that's going on right now. And that's something that I've really been sitting with, and it's been coming up for me because I have been going in and out of these cycles of spiraling and freaking out and losing hope and allowing myself to kind of succumb to the overwhelm of it all. But then, one thing about me and something that I've noticed from like also those who are quite similar to me is that like I can't stay there. There's just something within me, within my psyche, within my spirit that doesn't allow me to remain in an energy of feeling hopeless or powerless. For me as a spiritual person, I like to credit that to my own, my higher self, my spirit team, my ancestor spirit within me that just pushes me forward. And I feel that now more than ever. And that's part of the reason why I want to talk about it. So to start, I'll say hope, in my opinion, and also just from what I've seen and read and what I've been consuming, hope is something that is so necessary in moments like these where everything and every experience around us and everything we're seeing in the news and what's happening in our families and in our communities is really, really putting us in this energy of feeling powerless and feeling afraid and feeling hopeless. And something that just continuously comes up for me is how did those before us, particularly those of us who come from more marginalized backgrounds, how did those before us, how were they able to get through the things that they were able to get through? How were they able to procreate and like continue to have families, and where did they find hope to move forward when they were targets and victims of so much injustice, when they didn't have access to certain opportunities or resources? How did they move forward when they couldn't see a world where there could be peace or there could be abundance or there could be rest? Like some of the things that I get to experience, I often think about how so many of my ancestors never had the opportunity to. And I think about what their mindset and what their thoughts must have been like for their children and their children's children, or what they must feel in the ancestral realm when they see me and they see my life. And I think about the fact that we one day will be ancestors for future generations that don't exist yet. And I wonder, what can I hold space for in my heart and mind in terms of hope that can carry the future generations forward, right? What can I plant a seed for now that can help me get through and help us as a collective get through these difficult times? And I feel like we need to be having more conversations about hope, because it's really easy to get stuck in these feelings of feeling afraid and powerless. Sadly, I think that that's kind of the intention behind a lot of the overwhelming amount of information that we're receiving right now. And so I'm really sitting with that. I'm really sitting with the importance of hope and thinking about the ways that hope was so imperative within a lot of our communities, how this was practiced within my particular lineage. I know that for the Black community, different ways that we practiced hope as a form of resistance was coming together in community, was singing songs, making music, creating art, holding space for one another to laugh, to create, to share. I know for me, I grew up in the rural South, and in my very early formative years, my grandmother raised me. My grandmother was born like during the Great Depression, lived during peak Jim Crow in rural Arkansas. And we always went to church when I was a young kid. And even though I'm not religious, quite the contrary now, actually. um, I the church in the Black community still has a special place in my heart because of how it was used to instill hope in our communities and how it was a safe space for us to come together and hold space for one another, to cry, and also to organize, to build. During the civil rights movement, when Martin Luther King was going throughout the South, he often stopped at churches. Churches, unfortunately, became a target because of that. And I think about that. I think about how right now so many of us are craving spaces and community and are looking for ways that we can build together. And I think that we get overwhelmed by the thought of organizing. And I think we get really wrapped up in the specifics of who does what and how we show up. And it actually adds, in my opinion, to more of that frustration and overwhelm and anxiety that we're collectively feeling. And so I feel like this is where hope needs to be entered into the discussion as an important tool in this current moment that we're in, and as a reminder of how those who came before us were able to get through the tragic, horrific things that they went through. Because now that we're in this season, I feel like this is an opportunity for us to practice those things that were passed down to us. Because I feel like for the past couple of years, I think as a collective, and I talk a lot about this on this podcast, we've been purging, we've been releasing old toxic patterns and karmic patterns, and really digging into our trauma and looking at all of the different influences on our mental health and on our spirits and on our hearts and why we show up the way we show up. And a lot of times we've connected that back to childhood trauma, or intergenerational trauma, ancestral trauma, right? Which is something that is really talked about in different BIPOC and marginalized communities, right? Like, we know that we're healing from a lot of things that our ancestors went through, and we talk a lot about the wounds that were passed down to us. And I feel like right now, as much as it's important to continue those conversations, I also feel like we need to have more conversations about the wisdom that they passed down to us and the hope that they passed down to us, because throughout history, humans have gone through traumatic and traumatizing, horrific things. And it's, again, especially those who come from marginalized backgrounds. How can we, as we're digging into ourselves and healing and purging these things, not only look at, the things that were passed down to us that we're releasing and unlearning, but also the things that were passed down to us that can help inform us and give us the strength and courage that we need right now to come together, to build, and to be able to envision what a better world, what better communities look like. Because in order for us to have gotten to where we were, for those who feel afraid of things that are different and people who are different, and for them to start to push back so heavily, a lot of progress had to have taken place, right? And that progress took place because those who came before us had hope for a future that looked different from what they were experiencing. Some of them never got the opportunity to experience it. And that's something that I feel like we're kind of a little bit forgetting in these times, right? We might not get to experience a world where there are systems that actually work for everyone, where everyone's treated with love, respect, and like equality, and we're humane to every person, and we don't, demonize people or lack empathy for people just because they don't think like us or pray like us or look like us. Um, we might not get to see that world, but what we can do is envision what that could look like for our future generations in the same way that our ancestors did. And so I feel like hope is so important as a form of resistance. And I think that as we are figuring out ways for us to come together in community and build, I think that hope should be a part of that discussion, right? I think that there is a time and space for us to share the weight of everything that's happening for us. I think that's important. I'm not someone who feels that we should bypass any of the heaviness or dense energies that are coming up. They're coming up for a reason. And I actually feel like feeling anger and feeling frustration and feeling sadness and grief is human and normal and a good sign, in my opinion, and can also be, and usually is, a catalyst for positive change, for progress, for us to come together, because we feel more of a sense of urgency to do so because these feelings are coming up for us. So I welcome these emotions, even if they are shitty and overwhelming. But I also feel like it's equally as important for us, as we are coming together, to also be having conversations about the type of world that we want to build together, what that looks like, and incorporating ways for us to have hope. And this is why I just admire so much and also feel like it's so necessary and so important for us to create, not just create community and create spaces, but to create. Um, Something that I've noticed as someone who just like very neurospicy and picks up on different patterns all the time, is how much incredible art is created during times of tremendous tragedy and just, overwhelm and anxiety and stress and pain and grief and trauma. So much incredible art is created during times like these. Music, movies, poetry, performance art, visual art, all of it. And I think it's so important. And I feel like when we are bombarded the way that we're being bombarded right now, it can lead to us feeling very stagnant in our energy, which makes it hard to get that momentum that's needed. And I think creating is such a great way to move energy. And so when I think about how we can have hope right now with everything that's going on, I think about how can we create? What can we build? How can we come together, right? So I know, like, for me as a Black American woman, our ancestors came together usually with music, with music and with food. It's like those are like two things that immediately come up for me when I think about how the Black community has come together and had hope during, you know, so much tragedy and grief, which has been continuous for our community since the inception of this country. This is not new for us, right? So, for those of us who come from these communities, whether you're Native or Latino or whatever communities you come from, like there's something within your specific culture probably that's helped you and your community get through. And I think right now is a time for us to be looking at that and thinking about that. What are some things that we do that allows us to feel hope and kind of shift out of that stagnant, powerless energy that I again feel like is intentionally being molded for us right now. And so I think about music. I think about, how can I get together with people and just listen to music? How can I create and build community and collaborate with people? How can I create in general? Even if I'm not like the best painter or artist in the world, I like to dance. How can I dance? How can I encourage other people to get together and create in whatever way feels right for them, like whatever is resonating for them? This is something I've been thinking about, and I really hope and welcome conversations where this is seen as such an important part of the movements that are being birthed and created and focused on right now, and not, seen as a form of bypassing or not seen as being naive. It's so important, and it's important for us to look back at the ways in which those who came before us got through. And a lot of the ways that they got through is through community, and it's through creating, and it's through, art and conversations that instilled hope. And so I just want to think about some ways that we can be doing that in our day-to-day lives. And then on a more collective communal level, like how can we be connecting with and tapping into communities that incorporate that as an element of their resistance? And something that I'm trying to do right now, even in the midst of all of this uncertainty, not even knowing how I'm gonna, take care of my expenses and so forth, I just feel really called to create spaces and collaborate with other people who also kind of carry the essence of hope in the face of so much injustice. And so I've been looking at like the creatives, the artists, the poets, the dancers, the neurospicy pattern recognition people like me, the mystics, the witches. How can we all come together? How can we hold space for one another to share authentically about the weight of all of the things that are happening and how they're impacting us negatively, but also how can we also flip that and cultivate more hope that will allow us to have the space to envision the world we want to see, so that when we are coming together to build, we know what we're working towards. We know like what it is we're trying to create, right? Because that is so important. If we're coming together in community as a form of resistance to try to fight, what are we fighting for? What does that world look like for us, right? And it's important for us to have hope in order to even be able to envision what that could be, what that world could be. And if we succumb to the idea that it's not possible, I fear that that really impedes our willingness to go out and connect and to take action and to move forward. And we get stuck. We freeze. And I've really been like guilty of going into these phases where I do just want to isolate and shut off the world and disconnect from it all. And right now, my spirit has been pushing me to do the complete opposite of that, no matter how uncomfortable. And trust me, as an introvert, it's extremely uncomfortable. It is. And so, what are some things that you as an individual can be doing to instill hope, even if it's just brief moments, right? This doesn't have to magically be like in a state of being at all times. Again, it's normal to feel overwhelmed, to feel grief, to feel anger, to feel frustration. And again, those emotions are catalyst for movement, for change, for progress to take shape. So I'm not at all, again, saying not to feel those things or allow those feelings to come up when they come up. Definitely do. But also, what are some things in our day-to-day life that we can be incorporating that help to bring that hope? Help us to connect with that part of our being that and that inner wisdom that was passed down to us from those who came before us, who had to have had some type of hope to have gotten us to where we are, right? Despite all of the chaos and the pain and the turmoil that we're witnessing and the suffering that we're witnessing. So for me right now, that is taking time to move my body in whatever way that looks like. Dancing movement that helps me shift energy really quickly. Going outside in nature and being really grateful that I can be in a space where I have like clean areas where I can sit outside and breathe fresh air, because even that is a blessing. Realizing that and just reminding myself continuously that even in the midst of all of this heavy news that I'm continuously being bombarded with, there are such good people and good spirited people out there in the world. I've had the privilege of connecting with more and more people who are like that, who do have good hearts. And that gives me hope, because as long as there are good people in the world, then there will be someone that's trying to make everything better. And I want to be part of that group of people. And I want to seek out ways to connect those types of people so that we know that we're not alone, so that we can continue to make that hope expand so that we can build. Um, I love when I see stories where people are sticking up for those who are struggling, those who are marginalized. I love when I come across stories where people just randomly decided to change someone's life, whether it's, helping an unhoused person find housing or jobs, or helping children who are being impacted by the wars and the genocides, whether it's the activists who took it upon themselves to risk their lives to offer support to people they don't know, strangers, whether it's the people who are literally day in and day out, day and night, making sure that we have accurate information about what's going on, people who are losing sleep to ensure that we know what's happening and we see the truth of what's happening, whether it's people who are sticking up for their neighbors, again, people they might not know, and putting their own family and their own life at risk in order to help those people, whether it's people who are out in the streets handing out food, or people who are donating to organizations that are supporting making this world a better place, or people who are organizing and lobbying for better policies. There's so many people who are fighting to make this world a better place. And we need to be reminded of that, because I think that so much of the focus goes towards those who are making this place a more difficult, treacherous place to live, that we forget that. We forget that. And every day I come across at least one or two people that have a good heart and that are doing what they can in their own ways to try to spread love and try to help those around them and try to make this world a better place. And that gives me hope. And so whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed by it all, I try to remind myself of that duality exists. And as long as there's bad in the world, there's also good. There's always going to be a flip side to it. Just like when I'm having a good day, I know that a bad day could come, but when I'm having a tough season, I know that a good season can come, because that's the type of world we live in. There's duality here. And that actually gives me hope, knowing that there's always an opposite to what I'm seeing. So every time I'm seeing some terrible thing, I know that there's something good happening at the same time. There are some times when I'm meditating, and lately I try to meditate frequently. I've been kind of falling off lately because I have had moments where I've been spiraling and overwhelmed, and so I try to catch myself when I get into those phases. And I will take some time to have moments of stillness. So whether it's going outside, going to the beach, or just like meditating in my home to some type of like sound healing or whatever, sometimes I'll envision all the beautiful things that are probably taking place in the world. Like statistically speaking, someone just had a baby, someone just got married, someone just they were maybe the first in their family to graduate. They might have been like the first woman to go to a school. Like there are incredible things happening around the world, and I try to take it upon myself to shift my brain to that sometimes when I'm overwhelmed so that I don't forget. Again, staying informed is important, but I never want it to be so bad that I literally can't bring myself to think that there are good things and good people happening in the world. And I feel like that's important. And I feel like that's something that art does for me. That's something that creatives do, is that they remind us of that. They remind us of the beauty and the love and the hope in the world. And so I really encourage you to look for ways to do that and to not feel guilty for doing it. Don't feel that that is naive or irresponsible. I think we need to have a really nuanced approach to what's happening now, because we cannot build and make progress if we don't actually take the time to, one, take care of ourselves, but also really think about what it is we want to see in the world and have hope for what that could look like. And I feel like we have to do what we have to do in order to find that hope, right? So again, whatever method you use to do that, that's up to you. So whether it is creating, or whether it is consuming other people's art, or whether it is tapping into community or looking for those good stories, whatever that looks like is going to be unique to you, but I think that it's incredibly imperative to be doing that right now. I think it's necessary for us to be doing that right now. And I think whenever we have the time and we maybe are just having a difficult time with the idea of hope, I really want us to reflect on those who came before us and what it took for them to get through the toughest moments of their life, or what it took for them to get through the tragedies that they had to live through in order for us to even exist today. I want us to really take time to reflect on that and to think about that and to think about, culturally speaking, so many of the traditions and so many of the things that are still relevant within our particular cultures, because they were born out of a need for hope, because they were born out of resiliency. Like, I know that's so much of art and so much of the music and so much of like the best parts of my culture as a Black American come from pain. They were born out of pain, right? Like our community was able to create so much beauty and so much incredible art and incredible music out of places of pain and trauma. And it was able to get them through, and it was able to give other people who were going through similar things hope as well, to remind them that they're not alone in that. And I want us to really be thinking about that and thinking about what we can be creating right now that can carry the future generations forward as we continue to envision what a better world could look like. And I say all of this to say, a lot of us are struggling right now with our mental health. And if you have already been on this journey of trying to heal and you just feel like everything that's happening is just really setting you back, for one, don't beat yourself up about it, because that's human and that's normal. And honestly, I personally think that it's a sign that you're a healthy human if what's happening in the world is impacting you in that way, because it means that you actually have empathy, and you should have empathy. I think that honestly, like if you don't, you've probably really been impacted by like hyper individualism as a result of colonialism, but I digress. If you feel like shit because of what you're seeing, then you're a normal, empathetic human being. That's what I think. That's my opinion. Two, I think again, like we need to be having conversations about how we can instill hope. And if we are healing, that's even more important, because for me anyway, like depressive episodes, depression has always been linked to hopelessness, feelings of hopelessness, feelings of there's just no point, there's no purpose to it all. And reminding myself that there is something to fight for, like there is something to hope for helps me to move and shift out of those periods of severe depression. And right now, I don't know, I just feel like my ancestors are really moving through me because I have really been in a season where I've been struggling and it's just like something is literally pulling me out of it and it's connected to hope. It really is. Like every single time I kind of want to succumb to the overwhelm of everything that I'm feeling and experiencing both personally and witnessing in the collective, it's like literally something will not let me, and it's what actually got me to sit with and ponder what that is. Like, what is in me that won't allow me to stop, won't allow me to give up, right? And that is actually pushing me to spread more hope, even though I've been feeling this way. And for me, I could only connect that back to my lineage, my ancestors. I do like a lot of ancestral practices as well. And so I think that this has been passed down to me. And I think I've been healing my relationship with the word resilient because I know like a lot of Black women in particular and a lot of women in particular really, we don't necessarily like or resonate with being called resilient because we've been always expected to be so strong and it can be really overwhelming to be expected to be strong and not ever really feel supported, you know? And I've been healing my relationship with that because the truth is in so many ways I am. And during times like these, that is such a gift because that's what the world needs. And so I'm just saying all this to say I'm encouraging us to lean into hope and I'm encouraging us to lean into that ancestral wisdom and that inner guidance that I do think a lot of us are intuitively feeling. And maybe we've been fighting, maybe we've been fighting that because there is some guilt. There is like a sense of like we need to succumb to the frustration and the grief that we feel. But I think that we need to acknowledge and hold space for that hope as well, so that we can build, so that we can envision what a better world looks like. And so, with that being said, I am planning to create a meetup. It's called Roots and Reverie. I talked a little bit about it on my threads. I encourage you to follow me on threads at Just Riri Shop. Follow me on Instagram at Just Riri Shop. I'm also on TikTok. All of that will be linked in the description of this podcast. But if you are in the San Diego area in particular, then that's something that I'm planning to start. And I'm also connecting with other beautiful, like-minded people who are trying to create spaces for us to come together, for us to share authentically with one another, for us to compile resources if need be, and also for us to envision what a better world could look like in whatever ways resonates with us. So whether that be through food or creating or through movement, more on that soon. But I do encourage you to connect with me and stay tuned for more because I am very excited to continue to build in the community, regardless of whatever is going on. I feel like it's important for us to be coming together. And so I'm very much looking forward to that. And please stay connected with me if that's something that you're interested in. If this is something you're feeling like you're lacking in your own community, I have recently had the realization that if I feel like there's something that is lacking and I'm not finding it, that is white space for me to create it. So if you have the time and you have the resources, this could be an opportunity for you to also consider creating spaces within the communities that you live in, whether that's virtual or in person, big or small, something, a little gathering in your home or something out in the community. I do encourage you, if this is something that's on your heart, to consider how you can show up in that way for the community, even if it's just like creating spaces online if you're not comfortable in person. But I'm gonna leave you all with that, and I really do hope that it's helpful, and I hope that you are able to sit with, make a list of, or think about some things that are giving you hope, and let that be something that you incorporate as part of your daily life as we continue to move through and shift through all these heavy energies. And I look forward to staying connected to all of you. I'm sending you all so much love. I will try to soon compile some resources and things that I hope will help those of you who come across this if you are in need of support. And if you feel called to support me during this time, I can also leave a link to donate to me as well in the description. I do not make money from this podcast, so all donations are welcome so that I'm able to sustain myself and my family. And with that, I will leave you all. And until next time, bye.